Good evening. Today is Monday, March 14th, 2022. The time is 6:08 p.m., and this regular meeting of the Romulus Community Schools Board of Education is called to order. Madam Secretary, will you please call the roll?
Wester. Present. Terrell. Present. Kennard. Here. Piles.
Present.
Evans. German.
Excused.
Bergeron.
Excused.
Thank you.
We have a quorum. Please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. If anyone would like to participate in public comment, please turn your forms in to Ms. Evans. We do. Yeah, I am. I saw her coming. Mm-hmm.
Hampton.
My name is Rhs Hampton. I read the financial. I read the financial report that was given last week. I read it twice, 3 times. I didn't see. I just want to say that I didn't see anything that implicated Dr. Ben Edmondson of mismanagement of finances and his plan. I didn't see anything like that. I don't know. I still would like to hear from the board eventually. Why was he terminated? I'll ask that question every meeting until I get an answer. Because you can't go on business as usual. No matter how many programs you bring in, people solve problems, not programs solve school problems. And I've also wanted to say that the last thing I want to say is that, you know, it's really interesting. I'm so glad we have virtual meetings, because people in the neighborhood in my neighborhood want to say, what do you mean by Romulus has nothing to offer? And I said, look at this. You have one school board member that admonish Romulus saying they don't have anything to offer, but you have 3 school board members who vote her to remain on the school board. That just astonishes me, and it astonished the neighbors and the community. How could that be? Someone who literally, like the kids say, dog out Romulus, they have nothing to offer, but 3 of her co-board members vote her to remain on. That's all. I'll just keep on, like I said, I don't give up and I don't give in. I'll still be here and keep on doing this.
Thank you, Ms. Hampton. Is there anyone else who'd like to speak? Seeing none, we have a request for closed session on the agenda next. We're waiting for Mr. Schindler. Are there any objections to going on and waiting for him to arrive momentarily? Seeing no objections, consent agenda. Is there a motion? All matters listed under the consent agenda are considered routine in nature by the Board of Education and will be acted upon by one motion. There will be no separate discussion on these items. If any member of the board or any citizen requests discussion of an item, that item will be removed from the consent agenda and will become the first item of business under the report of the superintendent portion of the agenda. Sorry. A, to approve the minutes of the Board of Education February 28th, 2022 regular meeting. B, approval to approve the bills for payment as submitted by finance consultant Shelby Fryer in the amount of $1,642,783.87. Is there a motion to approve the consent agenda as presented, or if anyone has an amendment?
I move that the Board of Education approve the consent agenda as presented.
Moved by Wester, is there support?
Support, Kennard.
All in favor say aye. Aye. Those
Please raise your hand. I cannot hear some of the votes. Aye.
aye.
Raise your hands. Thank you.
Motion carries unanimously. Next, we have report of the interim superintendent, Dr. Weatherspoon.
Thank you, Madam President. There are 3 FYI items under Section 8. The next board meeting is March 21st here in this room. And the reason why it's the 28th is because spring break is the 21st, is that spring break is 28th, and there will be no business in the district for instructional purposes, etc. We've asked for and have been scheduling a board retreat for March 18th/19th in Lansing, Michigan at the Crown Plaza Hotel. That will begin on Friday night at 6 p.m. That'll run between 6 and 8. During that time, you'll be be in a workshop with Mr. Werfel dealing with communication issues and revisiting the statement and mission purposes of the district. The other is there are no other items at this time for miscellaneous things. However, there is an action item which I'd like the board to consider, and that is the creation of the intent to enter into a contract to create the Meta Labs. And I said this intent doesn't mean we're bound by any commitment in terms of a contract, but the district has spent a lot of time reviewing Meta Labs, and we're still trying to get more board members engaged in reviewing what the labs could provide to this district. And it's something that we want you to be aware of now in terms of whether or not we're going to move forward or not. And then next week, we'll ask you to commit pending approval of today's motion to state your intent. The third item is handled by staff in terms of the final approval of the cell tower. And we have a resolution for you to consider. And if you have any questions, staff will answer those questions. So I suggest you take the cell tower first, Madam President, and then you can move on to the resolution if you'd like.
That is fine. Is there a motion for the cell tower?
Madam President, recommended motion move that the Board of Education accepts and agrees to the terms of the presented June 8th, 2021 Tilson Infrastructure Letter of Intent proposal for a wireless facility at Barth Elementary. The rationale, the submitted proposal is to develop a wireless telecommunication facility at Barth Elementary. The board packet has the attached documents. The budget implication, letter of intent only, draft lease would follow. In the board package, there are exhibits.
Moved by Kennard, is there support? Supported by Wester. Floor is open if anyone has any questions. Seeing none, all in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Ms. Wester? Aye.
Motion carries unanimously. Next, we have the resolution for MetaLab. Somebody would like to read the motion first? The resolution first?
Move that the Board of Education adopt the resolution to create an entrepreneurship hub/Meta24 Labs. The rationale: Meta24 is an innovative curriculum designed to build habits and teach core and workplace skills to youth. It is built for a particular demographic that would not typically have access to this information or the labs that would be built for them. If we do not start providing self-directed alternative learning sites for students, neighborhoods will continue to deteriorate, students will not have access to the American dream, and dependency will continue to worsen as an epidemic in our country. Meta, make, enterprise, teach, and achieve. An update at this meeting: only the resolution is being requested for approval, and approval of the purchase agreement is not requested at this time. Purchase agreements are scheduled to be brought forward for approval at our next regular board meeting. The presented agreement is a sample agreement. The budget implications at this time are none, and that's it.
Madam Secretary, would you please read the resolution that we are voting on? No, that's the motion.
Resolution: an agreement with Banner Learning Corporation, Chicago, DBA Workforce High, a 501c3 nonprofit corporation with Romulus Community Schools / Wayne County, Michigan. A regular meeting of the Board of Education of the district was held in the Media Center at Romulus High School, located at 9650 Wayne Road, Romulus, Michigan 48174, on March 14th, 2022 at 6:08 p.m. The meeting was called to order by President Piles. The following resolution was offered by Kennard and supported by Wester. Whereas a Meta24 Learning Center is a place where students not only learn essential skills and earn credits, but where they also proactively prepare for successful futures, and Meta24 alters the current trend of traditional education and assists in revitalizing struggling communities, and Meta24 is designed to attract students who have dropped out of school, failed to graduate, or are on track to graduate well below grade level. These students need to re-engage in learning, but because they often equate school with failure, they need a different kind of learning environment with an innovative and stimulating approach to curriculum. Now, therefore, be it resolved that Meta24 Learning Centers educate public school students. Romulus Community Schools has a rare opportunity to create an entrepreneurship hub ran centrally in both the high school and feeder schools with unique products created through each site. Be it further resolved that the RCS Board of Education continues to explore the Meta24 labs and acknowledges / commits to creating an entrepreneurship hub.
Thank you. Just to be clear, Ms. Evans, you're making this motion and has not yet been supported.
Okay.
But there is a motion to approve this resolution made by Evans. Is there support?
Support, Kennard.
Moved by Kennard. The floor is open for questions.
I see that on the motion sheet, there's a line drawn through funding, budget implications. It states general fund, and okay. So, but my question is relative to even going forward. What funds would this $1.5 million come from? Is this going to come from our general budget?
It is our intent to use grant funds once the grants are approved. We have several grant applications before the Department of Education that are in the process of being approved. So we're fine-tuning the language so that it's acceptable to the department. The goal is to fund the meta labs with those grants to the extent possible. If it involves, for example, some structural remodeling, we could use sinking funds.
That answer your question, Mr. Rall? Are there any other questions?
I have tons of questions as it relates to this, this whole program. I know that we had a presentation, and I know that there have been trips to different locations to actually see the meta labs in practice. But what I haven't seen, and I haven't been able to attend those trips, but what I haven't seen is the data that backs up the fact that our students will receive increased learning that will actually transpire to successes for the district as far as education and learning, and whether or not the programs have been in existence long enough to determine, after these children have gone through the program for this set amount of time, we can identify that they are stronger with their math, we can identify that they're stronger with the necessary tools to move forward, even in an entrepreneurship type program.
Okay, Ms. Gowan, will you take that question,
Hi,
please?
sure, yes, happy to. Hi, Renee Gowan. So we do have some of that data, the presentation that Dr. Prince gave on the 14th, that has some of that data in that presentation that shows the test scores in that lab that we just visited in Chicago, where we can see how they've absolutely spiked. So we can get that to you, Board Member Terrell. And this has been going on for quite a few years in Chicago at this point. So we certainly have that in a presentation that I can share with you within the next 24 hours. We have a commercial too. I don't know if now would be the right time. When we were there in Chicago, we did film a commercial showing some of the staff members actually participating in these labs, if that's something you guys would like to see. We are also working on setting up another trip in the PM to Harper Woods for those who are unable to make it. I'm in contact right now with Dr. Prince and Dr. Jaber from Harper Woods, so we can get another group out there hopefully very soon to see those labs that were just created in the last few years.
Ms. Gowan, yes, would you please share with the board members and as well as our audience here today and those watching on YouTube the Chicago experience, and maybe invite your colleagues who attended with you to share that with you, and then we'll watch the commercial?
Sure.
Thank you.
Absolutely. So we had at the field trip to Chicago, we had Mr. Dave Thompson from Barth Elementary. We had Takia Watkins, our Director of Special Services, and we had Mr. Chris Parker was there, our Director of Online Curriculum. So they are all stars in the commercial. If we could we play that for everybody, Dan? We're quite proud of our commercial. And if I could just add, this was filmed by one of the students at the Meta Lab, and I will add that this student did have an IEP. So we are dealing with students who are students with special needs, students with IEPs, students who are at the lower levels, our alternative students. So this was filmed by one of their students, and we had a pretty amazing experience doing it. Thank you, Dan.
Welcome to Romulus Community Schools, the district of opportunity.
Now featuring Meta. Make, Enterprise, Teach, Achieve.
Innovation.
Production.
Fun.
Design.
Romulus Community Schools.
Making moves.
Welcome to Romulus.
Well, technically, I suppose we were in 5 different labs, because that first lab we were in was the multimedia lab where we had the green screen, and then we went to the 3D printing lab that was with Tahia and Innovation, and then we went to the design lab where Mr. Parker got a little sewing lesson, and then we went to the gaming lab where Mr. Thompson had a really good time doing virtual reality games. The students are actually designing their own video games. It's pretty amazing. And then we went back to Takia and we did the printing with the, where they were making the t-shirts, which you can see I have on right now. It was just amazing and we had so much fun doing it too. And as I mentioned, this is a student who's walking around and filming us and putting all these graphics together. So it was a wonderful experience. I truly believe that the more exposure we have as a district to Meta, the more on board we'll be with this. So I look forward to setting up another trip to Harper Woods so we can help get everybody aware and visualize what's happening here. So any other questions we'd be happy to answer. I'm sorry?
I would just add that, you know, I was able to go to Harper Woods, to River Rouge, and then to Chicago. The one thing that's been consistent across all 3 is the passion, the empowerment that the kids kind of exude. So to see them be able to create things and take ownership of things and be able to explain how everything works is really nice to see. I mean, that commercial that you're seeing, despite working with us, that commercial was done in about 20 minutes. I mean, they were able to jump right in and use the equipment and really like take ownership of it and direct us as adults to have us do exactly what they envisioned so that that could turn out the way it did. The state-of-the-art equipment that they have access to was really wonderful. In every lab you go in, to see the things that the kids have access to on a daily basis was really, really great to see.
And I would add real quick, just the connection, the ownership, the pride that I saw. Particularly, we saw older students when we were in Chicago, so we were able to run into, there was this one student, for example, who was doing like a supplement. He was making his greens or whatever it was. And, you know, to be able to see him, he had created a video himself, and he came and we were like, oh yeah, that's the young man. And to see the pride that they had. Then in River Rouge, that was also just the pride, the engagement that we saw with the students. That was one of my takeaways. So for students to be connected with something in the district, you know, outside of athletics, outside of academics. So I see this as an opportunity for specific students to be connected to different things within the curriculum. So that was my takeaway.
And my takeaway was engagement and inclusion for students of all grade levels, of all academic abilities. 40% of the students that were engaged there had IEPs. So that was very impressive because those students were engaged, active, they were learning, and they were leaders. They were showing us what to do, how to do it. Although they had disabilities, you wouldn't know it unless they told you. And when they told us, we were surprised because they were so in tune, they were very active, and they knew exactly what to do, how to do it, and how to execute for outcomes.
It was a great trip. We look forward to, if you haven't seen it before, we want you to see it here, but we can definitely get you to Harper Woods so you can see what's going on over there as well. It's a really impressive program. I think all of us who were lucky enough to go to Chicago came back with the same feeling. So, thank you.
This is Kennard. I have a question. Well, just an observation myself. I know Dr. Prince had also, one of my concerns and questions was, how did the actual activities in terms of what we saw with Meta Labs align with curriculum? And so that was one of my questions. And so there is a curriculum that's associated with each Meta Lab, and there are steps, you know, that the curriculum is provided with each individual simultaneously as they're learning and developing. And so that information, I think he kind of briefly went over that with us when he presented to us, but when we were able to see some of the things, particularly with the sciences and the math, and the end products of putting together the chemicals or the products in making some of the things that we have in front of us, before they can even do that, there's academic and instructional learning that goes along with it. So it's just not the end product here, what we see, which is actually not the end product, but it's next to the end, where when they're completed with this, at the end they can go on and they are gainfully employed, where they can also compete. So that means that all students from the elementary all the way to high school have the opportunity to provide this into their curriculum learning at the same time with addressing the needs that they need to in terms of regular education. So it's just not something that is met by itself, but there is education instruction that's part of the process. And so we don't have that in front of us today, but I'm quite sure that as we go on, you do have it. Yeah. So I just wanted to let my board members know that with each Meta Lab, later on we'll be determining, I would guess, if we approve this, if this goes on, what those labs would be. And then those types of instructional things will be left and determined by those who have that determining information at that time. So if I forgot something, Renee or anyone, or Sue.
When you walk into any of the classrooms, where any of the labs where they're doing production, you will see pages from this book. It is the math. You will see that they have to know their cost of goods attached to anything that they produce. They will have to know their bills of material, which is the quantities. They will have to know any chemical reactions when you're making candles, the scents that you might be mixing, the shampoos. You will see products here at the table that have been produced both at Harper Woods and Chicago. Is that body butter, Debbie? Yes. That's body butter. There's a face mask. There's a pillow. The face mask and the pillow we got at Harper Woods. The sweatshirt is from Chicago. But what's interesting also is the candle and the body soap is made by third graders. They were at, was that in Harper Woods? Harper Woods, and then they send their requirements for the labels that they need to put on their product before it hits the shelf to either the middle school or the high school for the printing to complete that product. And then it goes on the shelf. It's very interesting. The school in Chicago has been self-sustaining for 5 years, which is a very successful business. Normally in 5 years, you know whether you've failed or you've succeeded. They are booming in Chicago. And might I say, in a very lower section of Chicago. So it was all been very, very enlightening.
Thank you, Ms. Evans. What this does is there are standards that are taught with every lesson, and you cannot advance and go to the next one until students have mastered that material. So when we're teaching our students reading, writing, and math in a traditional setting in a classroom, that works for some of our students the first time. It works for more of our students with repetitiveness. This is a different approach where students in the process of making candles, they're measuring wicks, sewing, they're having to measure, and the math standards are incorporated so that they're learning with hands-on project-based material in a collaborative environment. And we will bring in the data. The data shows that these districts that have used this see an increase in student proficiency and growth, but also in student enrollment, because this takes education and makes it fun. They're making masks, they're making pillows, they are writing and designing games and doing the coding and developing video games. They are doing now the jewelry and fashion, and these are at elementary and secondary levels. So they advance, there's industry and manufacturing. This isn't the end all, as Ms. Kennard said. This helps our students graduate with reading, writing, and math abilities that make them employable, but they also develop skills that they can choose to start their own business, or they're transferable into different industries as we partner with companies and industries here. And we saw a lot of that in Chicago. Students who grow up in an impoverished area, looking at downtown Chicago, but thinking they can never be there. And they are now interacting with CEOs, providing them with business boxes. And it has been a great confidence booster, academic booster, and an avenue to give students access to opportunities when they leave Romulus Community Schools.
More thing that's very interesting, they have their own form of Shark Tank. So if a student feels that their product, their game, their ability to print is enough to get, they want their own business, they go before their Shark Tank, and then they will possibly be funded by Meta Labs.
Are there any other questions or things we want to add? There's a sauce down here. One of the best labs is a cultivation garden, and Dr. Prince shared with us that they plant, and it can feed an entire community. And what they do is then they share that produce, but then they also make different things. There's a sauce that they used, and these are all different groups, so it incorporates all students on all levels in each product. And I'll leave these up if anyone wants to come look at them afterwards and ask any questions. So we have a motion by Ms. Evitz that was supported by Kennard to adopt this resolution. And again, this is not a commitment of any money or that just a resolution to look at these Meta Labs as learning opportunities for our students. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed?
Ms. Wester, Ms. Terrell. Okay, thank you.
Resolution fails. No.
They say no?
We now have Mr. Schindler and Mr. Delaporte here. So we will go back to the request for closed session. Is there a motion? I move that the Board of Education enter into closed session under Section 8H of the Open Meetings Act, attorney-client privilege. Closed session will take place in a separate session. The regular meeting will remain open until the board returns from closed session. Is there support?
Support, Kennard.
Evitz?
Yes. Terrell? Yes. Wester?
Yes.
Kennard?
Yes.
Piles?
Yes. We are in closed session at 6:43 p.m. A motion to reconvene in open session. Is there support? Terrell? Yes. Wester? Yes. Kennard?
Yes.
Evans? Yes. Piles, yes. We are back in open session at 8:15 p.m. Next, we have report of the Interim Executive Director of Instruction, Mr. Henry.
Good evening, Board of Education, our Interim Superintendent, and Romulus community as a whole. I'm excited tonight that we start our series of the State of the School Addresses. So I'm going to bring to the microphone at this time and the podium the proud principal of Barth Elementary School, Mr. David Thompson.
All right.
Good evening, board members, interim superintendent. I'll give him a moment because he's got to pull up the presentation. Each of you also has a paper copy, correct? Fantastic. No worries. Have it right up here for everyone. I believe the person that was sent to is not here this evening. Would you like me to wait or go ahead and begin? Okay. All right. Dan, you can go ahead and start the next slide. So, as Mr. Henry said, I'm here to represent Barth Elementary. The sheet that we were given and some of the ideas that we were to cover, one of the things I liked is it asked about our tagline and mantra and kind of motto, and no one had ever asked us that before, because we actually have one at our school that we use quite a bit, but sometimes I think there's a misunderstanding about it. So when you see it in advertisements or you see it on social media, and we joke and we kid about it sometimes, and what we say is that Barth Elementary is an educational experience that is second to none. So I use that phrase a lot, second to none. And the misunderstanding sometimes comes from people think that they believe that it means we think we're better than other people, and it's not the case at all. Actually, the people I work with are hardworking, very humble people. What it is, it's a mindset that we want to try to develop in our school, that we never settle for good when we're trying to go for great, that we never accept where we're at when we can do better or do more, that we look out there and explore what other people are doing and seeing the great things they're doing and recognizing that we can improve in certain areas, and that we keep chasing that and we keep going and keep working, trying to be the very best we can in every single area possible. So it's a mindset about choosing never to settle for being second, okay? But in no way and no how has it ever meant that we believe that we're better than anyone else. Okay, next slide, please. So our staffing currently, we are made up of 13 general education teachers, and we have 3 special education teachers, but that's broken down into 2 K-5 special education teachers and 1 that is the leader in the early childhood special education program. So a lot of people refer to that as preschool sometimes. It is a special education program that we have at Barth, but it's made up of kids that are preschool age. And that consists of an AM and a PM session classes at this time. It is 5 days a week. We have a learning specialist, 1 reading interventionist, 1 resource room teacher, 1 physical education teacher, and then our other specials consist of a half-time, 1 semester of art, and 1 semester half-time teacher in music. We have 6 special education paraprofessionals. We have 2 part-time general education paraprofessionals. That's something that came about in more recent times during COVID. It was not something we had prior to that, but it has been a fantastic addition in our early grades. 1 speech pathologist, 1 administrative assistant, 1 principal, 3 building substitutes, 3 custodians, and then we have some shared staff. So we share a special education social worker, we share an additional speech pathologist, we share our ELL teacher with all the other buildings. We have a technology technician that is shared across the district and a psychologist that we share with all the other elementaries. We currently have 3 general education para vacancies, 1 general education social work vacancy, and 3 vacancies in our Lunch Mom program. We're looking at enrollment trends over the last 5 years. We've gone from a number of 311 in 2018, and then what you have seen is there's been a slight decline as we've been moving forward, where this last count day, we were at 245 on count day, but then an influx of kids came after. We're currently sitting at 265. Now, one of the things that is troubling when you see that, it looks like declining enrollment, so that gets a little bit scary. But then when we start tracking where the kids are going, one of the nice things is that a lot of the kids that are no longer inside of our building are still with Romulus Community Schools. Because of COVID and some of the concerns that families had, they were able to take advantage of an online program, the virtual program here in Romulus this year. So we have 18 students that actually took advantage of that program. So if you put those two numbers together, it puts us up again closer to where we were last year. So the great news is our virtual program this year did keep all those kids in our district instead of someone else's district. So that's a shout out to Mr. Parker and his team. All right, moving forward with attendance trends. This is one of the areas that is very concerning. So when you look at 2018, you're going to see it looks like it's pretty consistent moving forward until you get to this year. Although I will say the one anomaly, if you look at 2021, that number is inflated. Okay, if we really break it down, there was an issue last year with the system. Someone had done some things where it didn't count certain days, and then we couldn't get it fixed, and then we tried to get some help from RESA. They could not reset it. So what it did was inflated the numbers a little bit. That number should not be 97. It should really be more consistent in the 92 to 93, 94 range like the previous years. Now, the big telling sign there that has us very concerned is obviously the fall off with this year. So there's been a drastic drop in the daily attendance rate of our kids. Now, part of that comes from, with COVID, kids would have a cough, they were staying home. They were sneezing, they were staying home. So a lot of things kind of factored into that with COVID, but make no excuse about it, it is something that we have got to work on and improve. Okay. Now, our MAP growth this year, the numbers that you see are a little less than what we're used to. I do think with what I'm seeing in classrooms on a daily basis and how hard the teachers are working and all the support staff, I do think that spring you're going to see a big tick up. But right now, 41% of our kids were able to show growth in reading, and 38% of our kids were able to show growth on the NWA MAP test that they just took beginning of last month. Okay, now that's broken down a little bit further in the next couple of slides. So it shows the percentage of kids that are making their growth by grade level. So the first set of numbers I just gave you was school-wide, and then you can look at how they were doing across the grade levels. This is for reading. So one thing that really sticks out to me on this, if you look at kindergarten and first, you see that number that you're shooting for there initially is that 52 in the lower grades. So those kids were not in the online virtual COVID schools for as long. Now the one that jumps out where it looks like we've got some work to do, you see second and third. Now those are the kids right there that would have been in virtual school and all the different things that were going on for COVID during the key years of instruction. So I think that shows that we've got some work to do, but also shows how valuable that kindergarten and first grade like program, face-to-face programs are. Those early years are just so valuable to set the kid up to be successful for the years ahead. Go to the next one. Okay, and the next one just shows the same thing across the grade levels at math. Math, it's a little bit ebb and flow there. You can see for me, the one that jumps out is the kindergarten and fourth grade. We are fortunate that we've got a little bit more support right now in those grade levels, and then we've made some adjustments in our own program after seeing M-STEP scores in fourth grade and seeing this, where we have our learning specialist is actually, instead of pulling out 2 or 3 kids to work with, we've sort of reversed, and she's pushing in and kind of helping with the whole class in 4th and 5th grade. Okay. So the next couple of slides you'll see actually shows where our kids are at. based on their RIT score, which is what they get when they take the NWA MAP test, and it shows compared to where they are expected to be at that time of year. Now, the blue line on there shows where they started at in the fall, and then what we hope to see in the winter is you hope to see that red line to be higher, okay, so that more kids are on grade level. Now, there's a couple of spots that look good, are heading in the right direction with second and third, and then again, we see a couple of spots that we've got to concentrate on and kind of figure out how we can increase the growth there by the spring. Then go to math, and math is the same situation. You see second grade moving up, but then you see a couple of higher elementary grades where it's kind of dropped off. Now, it doesn't mean that their scores have necessarily gone down. What it means is they may have not made the growth they needed to make to stay at that grade level point at this time in the year, because they are expected to be at a different level in the winter versus at the fall. Sometimes you can make growth and still not meet the grade level RIT where you need to be in the winter. Okay, next slide. This just shows a quick overview of the M-STEP scores as we've been going back. We were doing fairly well, and then what we realized is I mean, just to be blunt, is COVID kind of hit us right in the mouth. And so now we're kind of regrouping and getting up and putting some things in place to kind of get back to where we were and then even try to build upon that. So you'll see a major decline there. We're pretty steady from 2017 to 2019, pretty steady above district, above county, and even above state in a lot of areas. Now, what happened in 2020, we didn't take the test. That was the year they didn't take it. And then in 2021 was the year when some kids took it and some kids didn't. So we have a count for about 75% of our kids took the test, because remember, some kids were still virtual, and then we had to bus them in to take the test, and then at the last minute, some kids did not have to bus in to take the test. So we did not have, all the kids did not come in to take the test. So, but the scores, I think, still show a representation of what was happening, is that we were having some declines in both reading and in math. Okay, you click. Can you click to 5th grade for reading? Okay, so same thing. If you go across 3rd, 4th, and 5th, you'll see pretty much the same pattern, but 5th did not fall as much as some of the other grades. Now, part of that, I think, is the fact that 5th graders were already a little bit more ready to be online with virtual schooling for a year and a half. I do think sometimes they had already learned a lot of the fundamentals of reading, and so that's why maybe the numbers didn't fall there as much as the other grades. The 3rd graders that took the test, you know, they were still learning to read when COVID hit, and some of those things took place. All right, can you go to the math? Now, when you go across math, you're going to see a very similar pattern. In the early years, in 2017, we were above district, county, and state. 18, the same thing. 2019, a small dip, but we were still above all the others. And then it fell off in 2021. So that's very, very concerning. And then 4th grade math is the same thing. That's the one that fell off the most. It's the one that we were the most surprised about. Looking at the kids that took the test there, again, we expected to do a little bit better in that area. So again, when we saw that, why we made an adjustment in our program to have the learning specialist start pushing in so she could service more kids and support more kids instead of pulling out in some areas. And then 5th grade math, similar pattern. We were pretty steady all the way up until the 2021 test. Now, some of the bright spots that came out of there, if you look at M-STEP Science, which is a 5th grade test, and M-STEP Social Studies, you will see that the school in 2021 actually still scored above district, county, and state on both of those exams. So while we recognize we have a lot of work to do in reading and math, it was nice to see a couple of bright spots that we did go up in the areas of science and social studies. All right, and then our points of pride. And there's always so many more, but on one slide, these were the ones I thought I would highlight tonight. But we're always very proud that we have 100% certified, dedicated teaching staff. Very, very pleased with some of the things that I saw teachers doing to support kids during the last year and a half. A lot of things that they were able to do and things that they chose to do went above and beyond what you might consider to be their responsibilities. I mean, there was drive-by birthday parades. There was one-on-one sessions to try to make sure kids were understanding things while we were doing virtual tutoring. There was financial support. I mean, you can just go on and on and on about teachers just giving from their heart to make sure that the kids and the families had what they needed during that time. So I'll never forget that. I'm very proud of our student leadership team. They've been able to do some things this year. I think it's one of the best groups we've ever had in that area, but they've been able to put together some school programs for philanthropies and reaching out to support families. But one of the things that was really nice they've done is they actually wanted to do more of an anti-bullying kind of initiative. So they came up with some ideas to help us as we move from October, November into Christmas to really have kids working on being kind. So they came up with a program where they were trying to encourage that and teach other kids on what that might look like in different areas, bus, cafeteria, classroom, hallway. And so we've seen a really nice decrease in our office referrals this year, which has been fantastic. So even when we break our office referrals down, about 90% of them were coming from the transportation department. So still, that's gotten a lot better since January. But in school, the kids have really done a nice job of owning and creating a community environment that it's their school. And so they're really proud of that. Facility upgrades, our security system at the front door, while not complete, is still much better than it was and is going to be fantastic when it is finally done. There's a new sign coming. You know, we ended up getting a new roof. There's a new bus loop, makes it a lot safer now with dropping the kids off. And I'm very excited because this morning we had another walkthrough for the new playgrounds that are coming. So it's really, really nice to see that stuff happening to help us compete with some of the other schools here in the area. A reduction in office referrals I mentioned. Also very proud of our staff with the rapid professional development in technology. When COVID hit, everybody was not as well versed as they are now with technology. They really did a nice job coming together and helping each other and finding other ways to learn on their own time, and then we supported each other and kind of made sure that everybody had what they needed. Now we kind of think of it as second nature, but when it first hit, I mean, they really did a good job of preparing themselves as quickly as possible. Very proud of independent professional development that is taking place. We have 7 teachers right now that are signed up in the cohorts here in the state for letters training, which, if you haven't heard about that, that's the language essentials for teachers of reading and spelling, considered to be the Cadillac as far as the training goes in reading. $3,500 a person is the normal cost. Okay, so think about that. We were able to get into those cohorts with the grants. Instead of paying $3,500 a person, we've got 7 teachers that are involved in it. So hopefully there's another cohort coming up. Hopefully some more teachers will be able to get involved in it as well. As far as next steps, I mean, problem number 1, we've got to stabilize and then grow the enrollment to school. We've got to make sure that we stabilize and then grow the enrollment at the school. We've got to make sure we improve academics. You saw some of the key areas where we've got to dig deeper and make sure that we're continuing to strive for improvement. And then number 3, that one of the things that we're trying to work on and really targeting for next year is trying to build a stronger sense of community with making sure that there's ownership, that this is our school, this is our community, that we can reach out and become a part of more things that are happening, and then find ways to bring people in more. Now that we're kind of coming out of some of the restrictions on COVID, we do want to reestablish some of those partnerships that once were in place before COVID. So that's the presentation and data that I have for you, but I will gladly take any questions that anyone might have this evening.
Thank you, Mr. Thompson, and thank you to all Barth staff that's joining us tonight. Will you just stand, please, so everyone can see who's here from Barth? Are there any questions from board members? Okay, seeing none, thank you very much, Mr. Thompson.
Thank you, guys. Have a good evening.
Thank you, Mr. Thompson. We are now ready to bring the State of the School address from Romulus High School. I'm also excited as the proud principal, Mr. Petty, is making his way to the podium. I'm also excited because at this moment, our boys Eagles basketball team is competing in the regionals, playing for a spot in the finals. So we're wishing them well. Their principal wanted to be there in person to support them, but he can only be one place at a time. And so tonight he's going to represent and talk about what they do in the classroom in addition to the court. So let's welcome Mr. Petty to the podium.
Thank you, Mr. Henry. We are currently up 44-37. Greetings to the Board of Education, to Superintendent Weatherspoon, to Interim Executive Director, Mr. Henry, to the crowd. I'm proud to represent Romulus High School this evening to outline some of the great things that have and are occurring at Romulus High School. One of the most important things, as Dan is getting a presentation, I just think back to, as Mr. Thompson described, you know, the great work of our teaching staff, our students, and our families. I mean, every day I come in, I'm often just in awe, you know, with seeing the brilliance of our students, the commitment of our staff, and so many great things that are happening at Romulus High School, and it's inspiring. So our presentation is going to highlight a lot of those great things. If it loads up. All right, great, Ken. I can. Oh. Thank you, Dan. This evening, we're going to start off with a highlight and pictures, talk about our SEL and mental health intervention supports, but definitely we want to, you know, in our PLC, our data trends and senior updates from Romulus High School. Next slide, please. Thank you. Definitely want to highlight our band program, Mrs. Rhs, who is here, and the phenomenal job they did last Friday at Band Festival. You know, a lot of times, even as she mentioned, you know, she's like, Mr. Petty, you're running here and there, but it's a joy to see these kids and to see the families pulling together. So it's not a job, and just witnessing her and the great work that the band did last Friday was amazing, and she's a phenomenally talented teacher. Next slide, please. Our Rhs Athletic Program, as was mentioned even in the previous presentation, have continued to really work hard. And we had to make some major adjustments. When you look at coming out of the COVID crisis and the many restrictions that were in place, we tried really hard to make sure that we had a consistent plan that followed both Wayne County Health Department regulations, MHSAA, CDC, and so many different guidelines to make sure that we were giving our students the opportunity to participate in a safe environment that supported our fans also in coming out to participate. Next slide, please. And in doing that, we were able to restart the Christmas basketball tournament this year, which was well attended. And our boys and girls teams, along with 6 other teams from around the state of Michigan, were able to participate. And as you can see, our very talented Paris McCarthy won as a girls coach, a girls basketball coach during that Christmas basketball tournament. Next slide. We're really excited that she also was able to win the 2021-2022 district basketball championship this year. She is a phenomenal coach with a phenomenal group of young girls and young women who are talented student athletes that represent the community and the school at the highest level. Next slide. We're also celebrating our boys basketball team, who last Friday won the 2021-2022 district championship under Coach Herb Buckley and that team as well. Great group of student athletes, great crowd, and I mean, even as we went out and participate, Romulus travels well, the community supports its team, and the students and the coaches represent Romulus at the highest level. Next slide. This year, Mrs. Vicki McTall, and we're going to keep her in our hearts and our prayers, was able to restart the boys swim club. This was something she strived and was passionate about getting started, and she's committed to its success. So we look forward to her continued support. We look forward to our boys team competing within the WAC district next year, and the great job that she's doing in reintroducing swimming to Romulus High School. Next slide. So when you look at it, we've had a great championship run this year. We've had, both in athletics with basketball and even with our bowling with Mr. Hunter Etheridge and Coach Markowski, and just looking at how we can have a well-rounded exposure for our student athletes. But once again, we did all of this knowing that first and foremost, we wanted to do it safely, and we've also not only were able to do it safely, we're able to do it successfully. Next slide, please. But we also understand the importance of having a social, emotional learning environment and a focus. So what we've tried to do as a team, and I know spearheaded by so many building leaders, is try to make sure that as kids come back, that we're looking at school as an exciting, engaging, and an opportunity for us to support them emotionally as well. And we have a lot of great resources, even as we overcome situations in place at Romulus High School. Next slide, please. We were able, once again, to work with our mental health support team. We have a general education social worker, a special services social worker, Mrs. Barr and Mrs. Rice. We have 3 on-site counselors, Mrs. Burton, Mrs. Moore, Mrs. Pearson. We've done monthly student assemblies. We restarted the Success Lab in mid-February, but we were also beneficiaries of the work from Mr. Wade Cook even as that process was moving forward. But our top goal this year has to build strong student relationships. We understand that building those relationships with students and staff and the community is essential. Next slide, please. We also, once again, in looking at our social work support staff program, we have the utilization of a licensed clinical therapist on campus full-time. Our social work staff with Mrs. Barr does regular referrals on an ongoing basis, and she provides appointments weekly, bi-weekly, or as needed. We work really hard with crisis intervention strategies. And we also look at how can we utilize our social work support staff in identifying, appropriate strategies with discipline. We don't want to just come down hard. We want their input. We want to know a background in regards to, what life issues and traumas the student is facing prior to us making disciplinary decisions. So we're not just utilizing them on the mental health side, we're utilizing them as an important part of our plan for discipline as well. Next slide. The Success Lab, once again, was brought back. With that, we have Mrs. Harris, Mrs. Fretner, Ms. Stovall. We were appreciative of the district bringing back Officer Cofield as our SRO officer, and once again, Mr. Cook as our success coach. This has been a really important resource and asset for our school. Next slide. They've done a lot of work, and I know Scott Rourke, in conjunction with our Success Lab, along with the work that he's done with us as a building and that early warning intervention system. And that was something I had even identified early on, and the principal in my former district was to be able to identify at-risk students early is a key strategy for support. To be able to identify, to be able to provide them support strategies, to be able to, engage them early is a key area. And I know the Success Lab utilizes that strategy. And once again, we use it as a building with the support of Mr. Scott Rourke. Next slide. And we're going to skip through this one. All right. Next one. All right. So the Success Lab, one more back. Thank you. So once again, the work with the Success Lab is going to establish improvements and growth with our 9th and 11th grade students who are at risk of failing in 2 or more classes. They do weekly check-ins. They work with students on the Breakfast Club, truancy enforcement. They help to support our ODR process and student conflict resolutions, as well as student reset and restorative practices. Next slide. But at our core, it's about RHS scholars engaged in learning. Next slide. One of our prominent programs is the early college program. Dr. Pachoda, who is leading it, outlined that there's been a 50% increase in student enrollment for the 2020-22 cohort, and that 92% of the 13th year students have already applied and been accepted into a four-year university. 38% of the 13th year students have a cumulative GPA of 3.75 or higher, with one with a 4.0 GPA, and 58% of first-year early college juniors earned a 4.0 their first semester at WC3D. So that deserves a round of applause. Thank you. Thank Dr. Pachoda. She's doing a great job. Now to our data update. Next slide. Thank you. Yeah. We're going to go through enrollment trends, attendance trends. Our enrollment trends have varied. I think Dr. Witherspoon talked about trends and decline in enrollment, being almost natural at this point in school districts across the United States for so many reasons. But we have gone from a high of 762 in 2018-19 to 651 students this year. So we are seeing a decline, but we did have, I would believe, a stabilizing number compared from 2021 to 2022. We had a lot of students, unfortunately, we had to do a drop just based off of attendance and truancy this past week. So that also impacted our overall student numbers. Next slide, please. Our attendance rates are currently, as you can see, a high of 96% last year, which was virtual, to 85% this year. So we are looking at various initiatives and incentives to continue to try to get students to adjust to being back on site. This has been a tremendous adjustment, and I honestly view it as a 2 to 3 year process, because we had kids who had gotten used to having class in their bedrooms and pajamas to now being reacclimated to being on site and being at school at 7 o'clock in the morning until 2 o'clock. It is a process, and it is a process of building stamina. It's a process of knowing that we've had stops and starts over these last 3 years or 2 years, but to get the students reacclimated to the process, and it is a core goal for us to continue to grow and improve our attendance. Next slide, please. One of the highlights has been is to look at our current disciplinary records. What I have always, prided myself on as an administrator is working to, with the amazing staff that I've always been able to work with, and looking at how we can support reduction in student suspensions. And that's been a key strategy for me. I'm a firm believer that kids in school will lead to increased academic achievement. Kids who are out of school will lead to a decrease in academic achievement. One of the things, you look at, if you look at our line, I believe we are the blue. So if you look at 2021, 2022, and I'll highlight February, for example, where you see a high of 100 suspensions in 2018-19. For us this year, we're at 13 suspensions for the year. If you look trend-wise, from 2021, 2022, we've had consistent declines in month-to-month suspension rates across all groupings since I've been here. So that's something I, once again, give a tremendous salute to our staff, our resources with our social work support team, and the Success Lab, that we can see that there are, tremendous drop-offs in our monthly suspension rates. Next slide, please. But we know reading is the key. And as we build our plan, we are following the structure of the district, and the district has set that 40% of all RSC students will be proficient in reading by the end of 2021-2022 school year. What we've done to try to improve our data is to create or establish a building target. Every department and every grade level, as part of our PLCs, and this goes with the work that we've done with the work we've done with Scott Rourke, has identified standards that we're working on within our PLCs and that we're working on in our individual classrooms, with a focus on improving reading comprehension skills for our students. Next slide, please. Through that, once again, just as the Success Lab is working with Skyrock with the EWIM system, we also use the same process where we do monthly assemblies to analyze our student data performance, where we've utilized the NWEA data performance as our key indicator for student success and improvement. Next slide, please. What I am seeing when I look at our trends in data is that even though our scores are below our normative RIT ranges, our standard deviations are still, right on target. So, for example, if you look at our current score around 212, I believe, but that standard deviation is running around 15 points, which then puts the actual norm RIT at 227. So, but for our standard deviation, and I believe also getting, students more excited about testing will be our key strategies that we want to continue to work on. And if you look, and once again, Mr. Henry has shared the presentation, you'll be able to look at each of our performance data pieces, both the normative RITs and our school RITs. And we're going to click through this. Thank you, Dan. We go to the next one, and next one, and next one. So all of that information is shared. One thing we have done to improve our data is through our PLC process, examining our scholars' performance and adapting instruction, allowing our data to drive our instruction. We reconfigured our PLCs at the beginning of this year. Our teachers felt like we not only need to have had a department focus, but we also need to have a grade level focus, where grade levels are able to work together in tandem to identify those students who are struggling within the grade level, finding that commonality, but also identifying potential interventions and support strategies. We regularly are examining our NWEA student performance. The data is essential. We also examine class data sets, and we're continuing to review the learning continuum from our NWEA data to identify both deficits and strengths. Next slide. Once again, we do monthly evaluation. It's dealing with causation and analysis, what is improving, what is reducing our student performance, and we're regularly looking at how can we address our challenges and to support our students. We also were able to revise our PLC template, and we are working in tandem with the leadership of Mr. Henry and Mr. Rourke and district leadership on utilizing visible learning training and utilizing that as a priority for our intervention strategies at Romulus High School. Next slide, please. Here we had our two great teachers, and I'm not going to show the videos now, but both Mr. Kapala and Mrs. Balcom, they did an amazing job coming up with a video just to ask students, what does a good learner look like at RHS? And the second question they asked the student, how do you know what you're learning in your class? That is important data. We need to know that. We need to know how can we adjust and continue to improve and grow our students' performance and supporting our staff with strategies. Next slide, please. Well, if you wanted to show one, but we don't have to. All right. But at the core, our goal is about academic achievement. How can we continue to grow and improve our students? How can we continue to grow and improve our data? How can we continue to grow and improve our overall enrollment and, continue the great tradition that makes Romulus High School? Next slide. Senior updates. I know I have, been a part of a few meetings that I have witnessed, but we have regularly and continue to regularly send out communications to parents, almost on a bi-weekly basis. But we also want to continue to update the board. Herb Jones has been in contact with students about senior cap and gown purchases. We do have cap and gown pictures will be taken on site on April 5th and April 23rd, and students have received this information. Students are able right now to purchase their yearbook. We do have planned a senior picnic on May 20th on site at Romulus High School. We will have our senior awards night May 17th at Romulus High School. We will have the prom toast June 1st at Romulus High School. We will have the Romulus High School prom June 1st at Laurel Manor. And we will be bringing back the Romulus High School graduation to Romulus High School. Next slide. I just want to thank you, the Board of Education, and Dr. Weatherspoon and the RCS Central Office leadership. And go Eagles, and we're going to continue to strive to continue to maintain the traditions, to maintain respect for the community, and continue to raise, Romulus High School to next levels. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
We won? All right. Go Eagles.
Thank you very much for all of that, Mr. Petty, and thank you for the shirts. Yes. Always excited to get RCS gear, so thank you. Those who are here tonight and you are part of the staff of Romulus High School, would you please stand? I did have one question to that, Mr. Petty, I'm sorry, because you mentioned cap and gowns. Students and parents have asked if students can choose their color this year. Has that been decided?
Yes, ma'am. We have decided to respect and go with a gender-neutral approach to robe selection. And we have reached out and sent communications to our student population that students can choose what color they want for their gowns. There was one caveat with Rhs Jones that students who had already ordered their gowns would not be able to receive a refund, but they could order, once again, the gown color of their choice.
Thank you for that.
Thank you, Principal Petty. And I think what we heard was that the Romulus Eagles won 56 to 55. That's what we were celebrating. So that is good. At this point, we will bring Mr. Scott Work, our district data coach, to give the MTSS updates to the board.
I'll start without a mic, and hopefully my voice will pick up on the sound there. Good evening, board. Dr. Weatherspoon. I'm here to present an update on our district MTSS process. And I want to first start by saying it's truly a pleasure to present this update following our two school presentations tonight with Barth Elementary and the high school, because they really exemplify what it takes to run an MTSS process in their buildings, to monitor, to first identify where there are challenges and where there are successes in their schools, to come up with a plan for those challenges, to implement that plan, to monitor it, and then to look back and say, where's that plan not working, and how do we make changes? Because at the end of the day, what we all strive to do is to make sure that we do the best for our students. So again, it's really nice to see that that's happening in our schools. So I want to give you an update on our MTSS process, because it has gone through some changes. And some of those changes are things that have happened at the state level that have forced us to look at our MTSS process differently. And some of the things that have just happened here in the district that caused us to make a change in our MTSS process. First, I want to talk about what has been the previous practices of our MTSS committee. First, the committee was made up of several different members throughout the district. It was our executive director of curriculum, our director of student services, the district data coach, school improvement facilitators, the school PBIS, positive behavior support facilitators, school principals, a social worker, teachers, and our school resource officer. That was our MTSS committee. That committee was in charge of monitoring
three really big pieces of student data. One is the academic progress of students, and looking at that at a broad lens, our state assessments, and then also our NWA MAP scores. We also monitored our student absences and truancy to see where we were falling at with our absences monthly. And then also, how did we respond to discipline, referrals, and suspensions? So based on that monitoring, we also had actions that we performed every month. One of those actions first was to improve our MTSS process, to constantly look at what were we doing as a committee, what did we need to do, following a rubric that was provided by NDE for MTSS. We also investigated our supports to improve student achievement and our RTI process, our response to intervention, and then develop a plan to increase student attendance and work with our school resource officer on truancy activities. And then also to support the implementation of our PBIS. And those were all done with regular monthly meetings. So where we're at currently is that last year, MDE, the Michigan Department of Education, introduced a new approach to continuous improvement. And it's abbreviated MICIP, Michigan Integrated Continuous Improvement Plan. So what this plan is that it starts at the district level to develop a plan that will work its way down into the schools. And so that at the district level, we know what's going on, we control where our resources are going to, and that we have a better idea of what's happening within each school. So that plan is at the district level, and it helps the schools implement a unified district plan, along with the schools identifying their own needs that will fit into that continuous improvement plan. The districts implementing the continuous improvement plan using the NDE's MyKIP platform were required last year to create one goal, and then from there to develop more goals as the district investigates its needs. So eventually, our continuous improvement plan will encompass additional goals for academics, attendance, and SEL, social emotional learning, to make up a whole child district improvement plan. So last year, in the school year of 2021, there was a change in the MTSS committee structure under the previous executive director of curriculum, Dr. Lafayette Laws. So our committee was restructured as a district instructional leadership team, which included the executive director of curriculum instruction, the district data coach, school principals, school improvement facilitators, secondary department heads, elementary grade level leaders, learning specialists, and reading interventionists. It was a really strong group of instructional leaders to take on the task of looking at what is this instructional goal that we need to develop for our continuous improvement plan. So the district instructional leadership team's actions have been to develop the continuous improvement plan with a literacy goal, gain clarity around the issues of Tier 1 instruction, and to implement the professional development plan of visible learning, and more specifically with teacher clarity. So that has been our charge this year, and what we have been working on as part of our MTSS framework is investigating what's going on with our Tier 1 instruction, how can we improve that, and improve that with literacy, because we know that literacy reaches all grade levels in all content areas. When students can read in all of their content areas, they're going to improve. For next school year, 2022-23, our district instructional leadership team will resume our MTSS framework to monitor and respond to the whole child needs. So then we're going to develop additional goals around academics, but then also look at those social emotional learning needs for students. Our attendance, our discipline, our well-being. Look at that, investigate our needs for that, and then develop our goals within that one district plan. So you've heard from the two buildings today, Barth and Elementary, what they're doing with social emotional learning and that PBIS support. So we know that that's still going on, but just just to kind of sum this up so that we know that this is happening, this other component to MTSS is happening within the schools. We have PBIS at the elementary and middle school that is supporting the social emotional learning needs for the students with Wayne Rhs. And then we have the urban leadership specialists supporting our students at the middle school and the high school with interventions to develop positive habits to live successful lives. So that's our update right now for MTSS. That's where we were before we made this change, taking into consideration the MyKit platform, taking into considerations change in leadership, but then also recognizing where we need to move now that we're getting a little bit more stable and a better understanding of this new platform and how to develop that district plan so that it supports all the schools within the district.
Thank you for all of that, Mr. Rourke, and thank you for all of the work you do in compiling data and in giving us reports based on data. It helps us as we make decisions. And I like, I hadn't heard of the MyKit, but as I'm looking at this and listening to you, and we improve student outcomes by assessing the whole child needs and developing plans for how we allocate our funding, that is very much aligned in what we've been learning about the Meta Labs. Reaching all of our students, and next week we'll bring that data in, but thank you. Thank you very much for this. Does anyone have questions for Mr. Rourke? Seeing none, are there any objections from the board to moving the social emotional update to our next our meeting next Monday? Okay, Mr. Henry, yes. We will bring back any objections to the action item of Meta Lab next Monday. Okay, the Director of Technology, we need to, yeah. Is there a motion? Yeah. I move that the Board of Education approve the recommended employment memorandum of understanding for Roxanne Kucharski for the time period of March 8th, 2022, and extending indefinitely, but no later than June 30th, 2022, at a rate of $1,400 per week for duties related to Interim Director of Technology. Is there support?
Support, Kennard.
All in favor say aye.
I had a question.
Okay, I'm sorry, go ahead.
This is on top of her salary, or this is her salary?
No, this is a stipend in addition, and so what it does is it is the difference between what she was making in the former position to the salary for this position.
$1,400 per week?
Yes, additional. What it takes her to the salary of the technology director because she's assumed those duties.
This is the rate per week, not additional.
It'll be additional for her, but it would be in line with.
Sorry.
What
No,
the
this is the rate for the duties that you are doing. Okay, so yeah, so this is the rate.
This is the new rate. This is going to be
At a
the
rate
new
of $1,400 per week for duties related to
that was
interim.
the clarity I
Yep.
needed.
Any other questions?
I love you, but no,
Yeah.
ma'am.
Okay, any other questions? No, I just wanted clarity on that. Okay, thank you. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Show of hands, please.
Show of hands, please.
Motion carries unanimously. Next, we have report of the Interim Director of Special Services, T.K. Watkins. And we heard about this training last week, but if you'll recap for us, thank you. We'll let her tell it, and then we'll make a motion. She can take a minute, we'll make a motion.
Good evening, Board of Education. Dr. Weatherspoon, community. I'm back again with CPI, and this time I have a presentation for you, and you do have a copy of it. And so CPI stands for Crisis Prevention Institute once again, and we're looking at nonviolent crisis intervention training for our staff. Next slide, please. Just a little bit of background about CPI. It is the leading comprehensive safety training organization for school districts in Michigan, and they have been in existence since 1980. So right now they have 38,000 CPI certified instructors. 17,000 plus organizations support CPI and have it in their organizations. They have 40 years of experience and 15 million CPI trained professionals in the United States. So let's look at the training defined. We're looking at, again, nonviolent crisis intervention, advanced physical skills for our staff and students. And the purpose is to support the care, welfare, safety, and security for all staff and students. There are 3 components. The first one is prevention. These components, the components taught in prevention are risk assessment, as well as decision making and problem solving skills. The second component is intervention. During that component, de-escalation strategies are taught. And the last and third component is safe physical response. And that's used as a last resort for dangerous behaviors. And during that part of the training, you learn disengagement and holding skills. So we want to provide training and solutions for our staff at all levels, starting with the low risk. And these are interventions, verbal interventions that CPI trains on for anxious behaviors, disruptive behaviors, or simply refusal behaviors like failure to follow instructions. The medium risk, or the next level that staff would be trained on, would be challenging behaviors, trauma-induced behavior, disrespectful behavior towards staff, and use of abusive language. And the highest risk that the staff would be trained on is those crisis interventions that require advanced physical skills as a last resort. That would be destructive behavior, causing harm to yourself or others, or physical aggression. And so our staff would be trained in all levels, and they would learn how to assess the risk and know which types of strategies need to be implemented at what time. In the future, CPI is planning to have classroom culture training, and once that's available, we definitely want to look into that as well. With CPI comes the CPI Blue Card credential. Upon successful completion of an instructor-led program, learners will receive the CPI Blue Card credential, and with that, it's recognized by major regulatory bodies, and it's required by many health systems. And each card will have its own unique identifier, which your certified instructor records into the CPI documentation platform, and it's maintained in comprehensive training records, and they're delivered to our district. So each person that goes through this training by our instructors will be Blue Card certified. Here's how the training model will work for us at Romulus Community Schools. First, CPI will come in and train us, the RCS staff, as certified instructors. There will be 7 instructors trained in the district. 1 from each school building has been identified. Next, CPI will be supporting Romulus Community Schools. After training, they support our staff with classroom materials as well as ongoing consultation. Third step, RCS instructors, our certified instructors, will then train our staff. And CPI enables us to combine their evidence-based practices with RCS policies and procedures to ensure that that training is consistent across the district. And lastly, we will refresh and renew our certifications. So CPI certified instructors will conduct regular staff refresher trainings to build competency. And then RCS instructors will attend a CPI renewal training every 2 years to maintain their certification. Let's look at the price. Specifically, the NCI Advanced Physical Skills Training will be coming here in district to RCS to train 7 of our staff members, and that cost is $5,224 per staff member. Then we have to order blended materials. For each person that we train, those blended materials cost approximately $44.99, and we're planning to train the entire staff eventually. And so we would order a quantity of 100 blended materials for the staff, and for the total cost for the 2 years would be $41,067. Here's our timeline for training. April 4th through 8th is when the instructors' training will take place. April 4th would be a virtual day where those instructors do a module online for approximately 2 to 3 hours. And then CPI will send their trainer in for the 5th through the 8th to train in person. April 11th through the 14th, we would start our initial Blue Card certification classes for the staff, rotating staff throughout so that we get everyone Blue Card certified in our district. August 16th through the 19th, if we have anyone who has left the district or who requires an instructor certification, we will have an opportunity to replace that person at that training in Grand Rapids on August 16th through 19th. We're not anticipating that because we have chosen people who have longevity and who are loyal staff members here at Romulus Community Schools. Quarter 1 in 2023, Blue Card recertifications for staff will start to happen. Each Blue Card certification is good for 1 year, and that instructor certification is good for 2 years. And so in quarter 1 of 2024, we will continue Blue Card certifications for staff, and then we'll have renewals for our certified instructors at Romulus Community Schools. And the last thing, the methodology for CPI training is a quick formula: engaging content plus hands-on practice plus embedded training coaches equals proven results to keep our students and staff safe. Any questions at this time, I'd be happy to answer.
Thank you very much, Tikia, for all this work and for presenting this 2 meetings in a row to us. Is there a motion on the floor, and then we can ask any questions if there are any?
Madam President, recommended motion move that the Board of Education approve the Crisis Prevention Institute agreement for nonviolent crisis intervention training at a cost of $41,067. The rationale was provided to us in the presentation, but in short, the district proposes to contract with CPI to conduct an on-site train-the-trainer model for 7 Romulus Community School staff members to become certified nonviolent crisis intervention instructors for the district. Please see the attached proposed agreement, board members, in your packet. The budget implications are ESSER funds.
Support.
Moved by Kennard, supported by Wester. Are there any questions? Seeing none, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries unanimously. Thank you.
Thank you.
That's okay. Is there a motion for the E-rate?
Madam President, Board of Education, whereas Romulus Community Schools initiate a cost-saving competitive bid process by releasing a 2022 to 2023 USF E-rate request for proposal for eligible network electronics, wireless network electronics, network switches, Tuberto power supply, SmartNet, the fiber maintenance as required by the E-rate program. Whereas by Romulus Community Schools received 4 total bids from Inacomp, TSG, AMCOM, Telecommunications, INC, Western Telecom, and the turnkey network solutions for various parts of the RFP. Therefore, based on the review of the bid response, it is recommended that the Romulus Community Schools enter into a conditional E-rate agreement with Intercom for additional Category 2 wireless network electronics 5-year license for 2008-21-73, resulting in the district portion to be $423.26. Incom for Category 1 network 6 switches for $9,050.13, resulting in the district's portion to be $905.01. Intercom for Category 2 network switches, smart nets, and UPSs for $194,499.88, resulting in the district's portion to be $29,174.98. Western Telecom for Category 1 fiber maintenance agreement for 4 years for $70,500, which is $2,500 per year, resulting in the district portion to be $7,050, paid $2,350 per year. The services and the vendor and the total and the district's cost. Refer to the chart. Yes, that's provided with the information presented to the board.
Thank you, Ms. Kennard. Is there support?
Support.
Any questions? Seeing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Motion carries unanimously. Is there any board member opposed to moving the report of the Manager of Operations update on Burton Center and Merriman to next meeting?
No.
Okay. Are there any communications from board members? I'm sorry, what did I overlook? We're bringing it next week. Yeah. Seeing none, a motion to adjourn. All in favor? I'm sorry. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
We are adjourned at 9:22 p.m. Okay. I'm going to send this to you